First, I'd like the two of you to sort of respond to those comments. We just heard from the counselor there. What's your answer to the question about whether the city should be paying the cost of getting these students to school? Who would like to start?
So I'll start. I think that's some misinformation that's been shared. The city does not incur 100% of the costs. The students actually pay for their bus passes in order to be able to ride the extra bus, although it is subsidized by the city, just like many other things that the city taxpayers have privilege to participate in. They do actually pay a fee towards riding those buses.
How much do they pay?
They pay just below what the regular student transit rate would be.
Okay. And what kind of, did you want to add to that or?
Right now, the students are paying $58 per month.
Okay. What kind of negative effect do you foresee for students at these 4 schools if the extra buses are taken away?
So when you look at the rationale of why we have, 22 secondary schools amongst the 2 boards, these are the 4 that are in the city. When you think of South Windsor and you think of East Riverside, 2 very congested areas, there's a rationale of why these 4 schools are the ones that are using the extra buses. When you think of for example, Holy Names has 6 extra buses in the morning and 2 buses at the end of the day. If you removed or eliminated those 6 extra buses in the morning, those students would need to look at getting on their regular transit routes. And if they are enhanced, the term of enhancement to the services, not sure enhancement to who. When you think of if they're on a route on Dominion and they're maybe perhaps in Southward Lakes, yes, perhaps through the recommendation and what that looks like from the City of Windsor Transit Master Plan, there may be some enhancements on that route. But when you have the other 5 routes, and when you look at where those students are living, they are living in the areas of Devonshire Heights, Byng Road near South Walkerville, or south of Walker. When you think of Kenilworth Drive in the sense of the Roundhouse, these are areas that those students would not have that enhanced service, which means those students would have to take a second or third transfer to get to school, which comes back to the whole safety aspect.
It seems like the issue seems to have inequity happening in that part of the city. Is that a fair assessment?
From the perspective of inequity in that area, yes, these 2 areas plus the 4 schools, yes. From an equity issue overall, I would say no. That has been mentioned. Students that the word select students or inequity issue amongst that population. When you think of, I'll give the example of Brennan and the Crosstown 2 on Wyandotte, those routes go regularly. So they're frequent. So we don't have issues with those particular city high schools. It's the 4 that are mentioned are the ones that need the extra school buses to continue.
Why do you think this issue has become so controversial?
I would say because it's impacting children. Everybody wants their child to be able to get to school safe. As directors of education, we want students to be able to get to school on time. When they're late, that's loss of instructional time, which is critical in terms of their learning. So when students or children are impacted, I think a community really pays attention to this.
What about the communication in all of this?
Mm-hmm. And also the neighborhoods, right? You have students that perhaps are on the street. I go back to Dominion because it's a very busy street with the, Dominion 5 is now Route 115. You have many students that will be out on the street into the neighborhoods, residential properties, waiting for the next bus or the next bus or the next bus.
But don't you think the issue itself has become controversial because of the lack of communication between council, the school boards, the parents? It seems from where I've been sitting, we've spoken to each of you almost in a silo way. And when you came in this morning, it seemed as though you had learned about this in a way that we weren't aware of. How did you learn that these school buses were being cut?
I learned through the media.
I did as well. You mentioned in the opening that we chose to send just a letter in terms of a response because we didn't want to engage in media discussion back and forth with the city. And unfortunately, now it's come to that. We were very open to have been consulted from the very get-go. We did meet with administration following our letter. There was some misinformation, I think, for parents, as well as perhaps what do city councillors actually know. So there hasn't been, in my opinion, a very thorough consultation process. Had there been, I know both Emelda and I would have been more than agreeable months ago to sit down to meet to try to come to a resolution together.
Our first time meeting with the administrative team that had this task of looking at, reducing costs in areas for budget pressures for the city through the Transit Windsor Master Plan was last Thursday, January 16th. It would be wise, as Vicki has mentioned, if we could continue the conversations with the City of Windsor administration staff. If they could, meaning the councillors, defer the recommendation, put it on pause until we had further dialogue to see if we can come up with some possible solutions for our students that would benefit their budget pressures.
How did the conversation on Thursday come about?
I think that it came about because city councillors were asking for some information and weren't necessarily receiving answers to all of the questions they were asking. I believe that they were asked if they had met with the school boards, and unfortunately the answer was no. So I think that they were then directed to have a conversation with us.
What would deferring the topic or the conversation do? You said that would probably be the compromise in all of this. What would that achieve?
One thing that I think it would potentially achieve is really looking at where the student's living and what does that enhanced route look like. I know Riverside is a perfect example. There are, even with the enhanced recommendations, there are no additional services to the students in that area, which would impact both of our school boards. I think it would give time to look at what are the actual costs and is there other options that we could look at. There's multiple things, but not having time to have those conversations or to know the details puts us behind in order to be able to look for solutions.
Administration, when they presented, also mentioned that there was going to be an East End Transit Windsor Master Plan enhancement, but it's not ready yet. We asked the question of when. Is it a year from now or 2 years from now? So without that, how do you expect students not to receive that extra school bus route until they come up with what that plan will look like? I go back to visual examples of, St. Joe's on East End. McHugh, Clover, Banwell area already has a lot of traffic congestion. So when you look at the neighborhoods again, you're impacting those neighborhoods. If parents choose to drive, you're going to have further traffic congestion. These are routes that were put in place in for these four schools in these particular areas, South Windsor and the East End, East Riverside, for a reason. When you look at the Dominion 5 or the Route 115, I take that route to work every day. And when you think of the buses that have to stop and pick up perhaps the 18, 19, 20-year-old students that go to St. Clair College, if they were to get to the next stop, some of those high school students would not get on until the next route or the next route or the next route.
All right. We have to stop there because of time, but I do appreciate you guys coming in and providing some clarity, again, in a silo fashion, but it's nice to know sort of where the school boards are on all of this. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vicki Houston and Emelda Byrne are the directors of the education for respectively the public and the Catholic school boards in Windsor, Essex. We're still interested in